Hello, everyone, and welcome to another week of Trad Tasman Talk. I'm Tim Wilms, Editor-in-Chief of the Unshackled, based here in Lockdown, Melbourne, where it is 6 p.m. local time, 2 hours before curfew.
And it is 8 p.m. here in Lockdown, Auckland. We don't have a curfew, not that it's possible to go out anywhere. And we are nearing the end of the second week of the second lockdown. And it's good to see everyone. And we do hope to have a good show this week again, because obviously the election here was delayed by a month, and we're in lockdown. So that means that we're back every Friday for now.
And the global mainstream media praised Jacinda Ardern for making the sensible decision to delay democracy by a month. I know that you, as a candidate, wanted the election to remain on September 19th. It's now going to be on October 17th, which is sort of throw in, well, my plans as well to have the election night live stream on September 19th.
Yeah. And obviously because of the lockdown and the extension, everybody's meetings, candidate meetings, everything's cancelled, everything's shoved down, everybody's timelines. Although, it does give some breathing room, but at the same time, especially teams that were geared up to have the election are now at risk of, burning out, or having to slow down, or having to, people maybe had planned holidays, and all of that's changed now. So.
But we were told that delaying elections, that's what autocrats do. And this is a side-by-side of The Guardian, their editorial saying, delaying elections, that's what autocrats do. Donald Trump's suggestion that the 2020 US election could be crooked is a challenge to democracy itself. And then this is by Bryce Edwards.
To delay elections.
Of The Guardian. By delaying the New Zealand election, Jacinda Ardern appears, I'll mispronounce this, magnanimous and conciliatory.
That's right.
But it is true that it wasn't her preferred option, and it was actually the opposition, national opposition.
That's what makes the difference. Obviously, if Trump suggests it, it's not okay because the opposition doesn't want it. And in the American case, that's certainly it. They want the election as soon as possible because they're in a good position to win. And that's the same position that Jacinda held. Obviously, is not delaying the election. Possibly would give her a stronger position, might be a little bit easier to win with the election, with the opposition wanting it pushed out, because then it would give them a little bit of breathing room. So that's why you're going to get the different reporting, because it's okay when, it's okay when the left do it, and it's okay when, she was essentially forced into that position of having to do it, so they have to make it appear like it was magnanimous.
And so how is a COVID-safe election going to look like? Because before she made the announcement, she said, the Electoral Commission have already done all the preparation for every possible scenario. So how's it looking?
So as long as we are under level 2, then supposedly it's fine to have the election, which just means social distancing is in place. It could be mandatory masks for the polling booths, who knows? But that seems to be it. As long as distancing is possible, just like, for instance, a supermarket or any other essential service, voting would be an essential service. And so it could just be carried out like normal with proper social distancing. That's the plan that the Electoral Commission prepared.
Well, we have local government elections in Victoria scheduled for late October, and we got confirmation this week that they would proceed by the electoral calendar, but local government elections are conducted by mail-in voting anyway. So you get these thick envelopes from the Electoral Commission, you get a pamphlet about who the candidates are. But it doesn't. All it just has is a blurb about what they're going to do for the local area. It doesn't. They don't explicitly say whether they're a green or socialist. So you have to do your homework to make sure that you don't accidentally elect a councillor who's going to abolish Australia Day and waste racepaye's money on social justice issues.
Yeah, it's just like our local elections as well. Similar, especially they all run as independents, regardless of what their party affiliation might actually be. That's quite common, and we do have postal voting for these local elections as well. And in part because they're simply not considered important because they don't have enough power, and that's why postal and because it's open to more fraud. It doesn't matter so much when there's less at stake, which is why it's so important to oppose it at the national level, because in-person voting is the only properly reliable way of voting.
Well, we had going back almost 3 years now, the marriage law postal survey, which was not conducted by the Electoral Commission, but by the Australian Bureau of Statistics, because the Turnbull government at the time couldn't get the legislation through the parliament to have a plebiscite, so they did a workaround with, and there were lots of reports at the time about ballots going missing. What the ABS did to ensure the validity of the survey is that each survey form had a unique barcode on it.
Yep.
Which obviously it sort of compromises the secret ballot of it if they're
exactly if you've got a traceable barcode.
But 3 years later, everyone's privacy was protected, and it was one of those. I'm not sure if I was actually in New Zealand at the time covering your election, and I was glad that I was over there because the campaign just got so toxic and cringeworthy. So I was glad to be out of Australia at that time. But the results were announced basically like they do in the UK elections, a vote declaration. So the head of the Australian Bureau of Statistics got up at a press conference 10 a.m. on a Wednesday morning and read out the results. Nobody knew the results until he read them out. And he was like a reality TV host in here, that he was padding for about 5 or 10 minutes saying, this was such a wonderful survey. The ABS, we love collecting data. And everyone's just like, tell us the results.
Yeah, the entire nation is a captive audience. A little bit like our daily press conferences here in New Zealand, where especially if there's an important announcement, everybody's just watching. And then there's, like I said, the 5 or 10 minutes of padding at the front. And it's like, no, we're just tuning in for the 10 seconds. We're just tuning in. Is the lockdown extended? Is it not extended? Is the level, the alert level going up or down? And it usually takes them a very long time to get to the point.
Oh, Dan Andrews, to give him credit, he just gets right into the daily statistics right away. And it used to be that the media would get the inside scoop through their sources in the Department of Health and Human Services, but now the DHS Twitter account publishes it at around about 9 a.m. every morning. So the media doesn't get a heads up; they find out at the same time as us what the daily new active case numbers are and the new deaths. And well, that's where we're going to start for tonight.
Yes,
the numbers. Hello
absolutely.
to everyone in the Unshackled YouTube chat. With the new format we introduced last week, we're going to have a Q&A at the end. And through the Unshackled chat, you can also send a super chat directly through YouTube by pressing the dollar button, writing your message and amount, and we'll read it out, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yes, and we've just finished our 15 minutes of introduction fluff, and we're like Tim has said, we're going to get into the numbers first.
Hey, it was 10 minutes.
10 minutes, yeah. By the time I'm finished here, it'll be 15, right? So we're going to go through all of the numbers, and obviously the title of the episode is the Corona fatigue, and everyone is getting a bit tired of this, and that's really what I think where the numbers are pointing as well. And we've got a little bit of economic stuff. There's a lot of developments on protests in Australia and New Zealand around the lockdowns and continued restrictions, and obviously some progress on various treatments as well, all of which we will get into on the show. And as Tim has already said, we'll finish up again with a Q&A, since that went quite well last week, and we had too many questions to answer. So if you want your question answered, a super chat is the way to go. And otherwise, we'll just pick what we need to fill up the hour. And I think it's.
And if you're asking a question in the Unshackled YouTube chat, so I see it properly, please tag my channel name, which is Wilms Front, because then it turns up on my account in red, so it's nice and bright, so you can get my attention.
Cool. But save those for the end. Let's start with the Australian coronavirus numbers.
Well, it's been better bad news this week, to use that expression. This is the latest numbers in the last 24 hours. So 179 new cases. That's the lowest daily new cases in 5 weeks. Our active cases have almost halved in the past week. It's down to 4,421. It did get as high as 7,900, and as you can see, basically a quarter of our total cases now are active. Our total cases 17,852. So as you can see there, the recoveries are really starting to happen now. Tests in the past 24 hours were just over 20,000. Daniel Andrews earlier in the week was saying, because there was only about 16,000 getting tested per day, that if we don't reach that benchmark of 20,000 per day, we can't have confidence about the level of virus in the community and can't relax the restrictions. We hit the 2 million total tests. Still got 626 in hospital, but that is down from a peak. 43 in ICU, and 13 lives lost in the last 24 hours. 385 lives lost in total. 363 are in those second wave, but as you can see, now with that was the first wave there in April, and then obviously the second wave significantly higher, but you can see that trend now. It peaked at the start of August, but the trend has been consistently down, and it was another major drop day today from 240 yesterday to 179 today. So the reason why we've called the episode tonight Corona Fatigue, because now the conversation is turning to, and this is what Dan Andrews is being asked at his press conference, when restrictions are going to be relaxed. When you do relax them, how many of them will you? And they always ask him, what daily figures would be acceptable? And of course, they continue to say, and so does the chief health officer, will be guided by the data. We're in a marathon, not a sprint. I don't want to make bold predictions.
It sounds just like Jacinda this afternoon.
Yes. They just say we want daily case numbers to be much, much lower.
Mm-hmm. And New Zealand's case numbers are not that interesting. We don't have fancy graphs like the Australians get. We're sort of low budget. We get a little table, an HTML table that's updated every 24 hours. 11 new cases in the last 24 hours. We have 3 people in hospital, 0 deaths, and that's about it. So we still have just over 100 active cases at the moment, and they're all from one cluster, and they have not really nothing really more has come up out of this. The past 10 days have just been between half a dozen to a dozen cases every day, and there's been nothing more than that.
So the second wave does be appearing both in Melbourne and Auckland to be subsiding, and that's also what's happening in the US state of Florida, which had experienced a real surge in its second wave. But it's not over until our cities can have a giant pool party like they did in Wuhan this week, which was the birthplace of the virus. When we have, hopefully in summer, a giant pool party in the middle of Melbourne or Auckland, that'll signify the end of the virus.
I chose another one of those good times to take a sip of gin during that pool party photo. That is quite something.
It's
Clearly
where all we'd
Wuhan,
rather be.
yeah. Wuhan, they've successfully exported their flu, around the world, and they can have a nice party to celebrate while the rest of us are locked down by our governments. So.
There's a couple of super chats already in the Unshackled YouTube chat. They are relevant to what we're talking about now. Red Foreman Bear has sent through $5 Australian. Thank you so much, but he hasn't included a message. If you do subsequently post a message, we'll definitely read it out. And Andrew McGuinness, who's a new fan of the show, who super chatted last week as well, has sent through another $5 Australian. Thank you so much. He says, I know I'm probably preaching to the choir, but how many of the deaths are actually from COVID-19? Well, we actually got an admission from our Chief Health Officer this week that if you die from something else, but you have COVID at the time, which may or may not have accelerated your death, you'll still be counted as a COVID death. And we've talked about this consistently. The people who've died from COVID had, a lot of them had pre-existing condition, and most of the deaths are really old people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. We even had today another man in their 100s die as well.
Mm-hmm. And in New Zealand, we've actually had a OIA, official information request, that was made asking how many of the coronavirus deaths tested positive for coronavirus. So we have 22 official deaths of COVID-19. Only 17 of those tested positive, and sorry, I should say 16, because one person in the deaths tested negative, but she was still counted as a death, even though she tested negative. So we have about 16 or 17 of the official deaths that actually tested positive in New Zealand. So you can calculate that into percentages, and get yourself maybe you could apply that similarly to Australia.
And nationally, this is what our coronavirus curves look like. So 463 deaths in total. There's been a few coronavirus deaths over the past week from New South Wales, which has been the main hotspot for the Melbourne wave of the CCP virus, as it's being termed. But you can see the national coronavirus curve peaked around the same time the Victorian one did, and it's consistently down as well. But the Melbourne wave, or Victorian wave, has spooked all the other state and territory leaders, and so they're putting up the border shutters again. South Australia, despite our numbers on the way down, is enacting a hard border closure with Victoria, which is really going to cause significant disruption to border communities and anxiety to those who cross the border for work and education into South Australia. And the virus is hardly in regional Victoria, let alone the municipalities on the South Australian border.
And it's a similar situation here in New Zealand, where obviously the entire country is under level 2 restrictions outside of Auckland, but there have been no cases in the South Island. There have been no cases further south of the Waikato. So the entire country is in these restrictions, yet people who live extremely rurally have zero risk. Even at the height of the first lockdown, there were virtually no rural cases. But obviously everyone has to suffer together, which was the topic of last week's show. And the heavy-handed tools come in, and that is what causes a lot of unrelated misery.
And we've got our first border post-COVID election happening in the Northern Territory this Saturday. The Labor Chief Minister, Michael Gunner, he was in incredible trouble before the pandemic for basically putting the territory on the path to bankruptcy due to a bloated public service. But now he's running on, I kept community transmission out of the Northern Territory. If the Country Liberal Party were in charge, they would have opened our borders to Victorians and we would have all been infected. But it's going to be a three-cornered contest, the Northern Territory election. There's the CLP, the ALP, and also the NT Alliance, which is a new local party founded by former CLP Chief Minister Terry Mills. The one debate that they had three people on the stage, but it'll be interesting the results tomorrow, because if Michael Gunner, despite his mismanagement of the state's finances, if he wins on borders, then it sets a precedent for the other state and territory leaders to keep the borders up, which, and we've consistently made these points, could turn out to be unconstitutional under Section 92 of Australia's Constitution. The madman, fat man, Clive Palmer is still determined as ever to proceed with his court challenge.
And on that topic, New Zealand had a court ruling today by our, this week, by our High Court, and the initial level 4 lockdown was ruled to be unlawful, which is something I brought up on this show time and time again. The interesting thing is they ruled the government did have the mechanisms to do it. They just did it improperly. So they didn't actually invoke the Health Act properly, and they simply held press conferences and made statements from press conferences. And the High Court correctly ruled that a statement from a press conference does not override New Zealand law. And so, with that having been unlawful, it will be interesting to see if we get any fallouts. Where incoming lawsuits from people who had their businesses destroyed, other damages that people could claim since the government had acted unlawfully. The creepy thing, though, from the courts were that the judge ruled that it was justified. So he said the restrictions, the announcements they made were unlawful, but they were justified. So we have the highest court in New Zealand basically saying, if the government can break the law, but it can be okay. It can be justified for them to break the law.
My moderator, Margot, has said, please stop referring to Clive like that. Well, it's the truth. He's very fat, and he's also very mad as well, as demonstrated by his political career. But I support him on his border challenge because, well, sometimes it takes a madman to get something done. And he's
true.
He's turned himself into, in the process, the number one enemy of the state of Western Australia. I think I talked about last week the emergency legislation that they rushed through the WA Parliament to deny him natural justice in relation to a mining arbitration lawsuit. Mark McGowan, he faces election, the Labor Premier, in March 2021. He has said the hard border could remain until middle of next year, and
or at least.
And he's become so fixated now on making sure the virus remains eliminated from Western Australia. He now wants to equip hotel quarantinees with ankle bracelets because there's been a few escapees. I don't think he wants a Jacinta situation, a pre-election surprise.
Yeah, and the it's a similar kind of demonization that happened in New Zealand. Although our the man who brought our case here against the Crown, his name is Andrew Borrowdale. He's not particularly famous, but he was vilified as well.
Was that him in the photo of the BFD article?
No, the one at the top of the BFD article is the health minister. I believe that one's the previous health minister, or the David Parker or Chris Hipkin. The Attorney General. I can't remember. They all look the same to me. The Attorney General, David Parker, Yeah, he was in that photo, and he's the one who said that the advice they got was fine. Everything was legal. We didn't break any laws. Then he refused to release the advice, and even now he's obviously not apologized. It's been said what you did was illegal, and he's basically said, so what? So it's the Attorney General, the highest law officer in the land, has just basically just said, I am above the law.
And a typical government arrogance that they punish everyone else for not following their laws, but when they break their own laws, it's either oh, my bad.
Now, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Basically, that's the attitude. What are you going to do about it? And it's essentially a case where they can say, "Oh, well, we have public opinion on our side. We'll do whatever we can do, whatever we want."
Well, our High Court certainly interprets the Constitution to the letter of the law. They're not swayed by what public opinion is. And you'll remember in our previous Parliament, they caused a mini constitutional crisis with the dual citizenship ruling, which knocked out so many of our MPs due to birthright dual citizenship.
Yeah. So, and I shared at the time in New Zealand that came up a while ago. It's before my time, I think probably nearly 20 years ago, and the government simply just passed a law saying it was okay, and the problem was solved. That's how they do things in New Zealand. Oh, something's illegal, we just fix that in 5 minutes.
Well, you don't have a
we just retroactively legalize it, and that's the problem, and that's what we need. And it is something that we have actually discussed in the New Conservative Party, and that is something we're proposing as legislative standards that enshrine the Bill of Rights and the Magna Carta as constitutional, as having a constitutional standard that can be used by courts to strike down laws as against the fundamental rights of the nation. And that's something that would be great for New Zealand, but it's something that we don't have. The courts will never strike down any laws, and anything can override the Bill of Rights to the courts. They just say, oh, well, this law was a newer law, and the Bill of Rights is old law, and the new law takes precedence. That's the way that our courts work, and that's just that's what we're stuck with for now.
Well, we have in Victoria the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities, which they've been able to suspend some of that with the state of disaster declared. So we have the state of disaster working concurrently with the state of emergency, but Daniel Andrews has extended the state of emergency to its 6 months maximum limit with the stage 4 lockdown till September 13th. So if he wants to extend it further, he'll have to go back to the Victorian Parliament to pass legislation, which hasn't been sitting for quite a while, though we have finally had the hotel quarantine inquiry sat, where what we all suspected was going on, a lot of non-COVID safe quarantine practices going on there. That is coming out.
We've actually had some updates on our sources. Last week we were joking about the frozen chicken. I do have to issue a correction from last week. It wasn't frozen chicken from the Americold factory or cool store. It was frozen peas. So they were going to blame frozen peas for the outbreak in New Zealand. But extensive testing of all of the frozen peas in the facility has revealed that there was no RNA strands or any kind of coronavirus on the frozen peas. So they're having to walk that back and say that it was essentially the border. It was the quarantine facilities, but they still won't outright say it, but they've all but admitted it, which we knew from the beginning was the case. They even identified a second source, which was somebody who went on to America, coughed in an elevator, and after that, one of the cleaners walked into the elevator and apparently caught the virus, since that's the only link they have found to that strain. Who knows? But it comes from the quarantine facilities, and they now after denying it for 2 weeks, have to say, yeah, okay, it may have come from the facilities. So.
Also, the federal Senate estimates hearings have been taken place this week, where one of the ADF leaders talked about ADF because it's been a back and forth between the federal Department of Defense and the Premier about whether ADF assistance was on offer. It turns out that they didn't request ADF assistance for hotel quarantine, but did want to use ADF drones to spy on Victorians during lockdown. And our Liberal opposition leader, Michael O'Brien, he actually had a really good one of those Drake memes here. It's ask ADF to run hotel quarantine. Yuck. Yeah. Ask ADF to spy on Victorians. Well, they did get their drones this week. The Victorian government, Victoria Police have deployed them starting at St Kilda, since there's a lot of walking parks
too
there.
Much walking.
Yes, so they want to check people are socially distancing, wearing masks, or maybe that's the area where they got the most complaints from St Kilda and the surrounding suburbs.
It's where too many Karens live.
Yeah.
In New Zealand, we had they were going to use the army to look at the borders. As far as I know, that's never really happened to a great extent. But they did finally bring in the army to secure Auckland. So they've got 9 checkpoints around the city manned by the army to keep Aucklanders locked inside the city. They actually even found a truck smuggling people out of Auckland this week. So I thought you'd be keen to hear that, since I know you had a few incidents in Victoria with people smuggling vehicles out of Victoria.
No, that was actually just fears. It was the Queensland Premier.
It actually happened in Auckland. So they searched a van. So they then implemented a policy which obviously caused a lot more traffic jams. But they searched then every truck, every van, any kind of vehicle that looked like it could hold a lot of people had to be searched to make sure that people were not being smuggled out of Auckland.
Maybe they could have just done what Sideshow Bob did when he followed the Simpson family to Terra Lake, just in the engine, underneath the car.
We'll have to strap people to roofs or something. Who knows how we'll smuggle people out of Auckland now? But yet. The police do have, draconian powers in New Zealand. They have they've been given almost unlimited power in many regards by the coronavirus legislation, by the checkpoints in around Auckland. But the sort of good news for now is they actually are not using that power to a great extent. They're continuing what they call their educational approach. And only 2 people so far have been arrested for breaches of quarantine. Basically not quarantine breaches, but level 3 alert, lockdown breaches. So only 2 arrests, and I don't know if only is only, but that's certainly not a large number.
Oh, well, that's the Victoria Police here are still issuing hundreds of fines each day for not wearing masks, breaching curfew, going out of the 5-kilometre radius. As I've said previously, the police commissioner Shane Patton bragged about smashing car windows in if people at checkpoints didn't answer questions.
Yeah, and they were very sorry. They were like, we were forced to break people's windows.
No. It wasn't like that. But we did see actually. It was Port Phillip iWatch, that police page, where they actually informed local residents that you could not drive for your daily exercise. That would be a breach of lockdown. And through basically bragging that was against the stage 4 restrictions, that got quickly updated by the chief health officer in consultation with Victoria Police. So you now are allowed to drive to a park to get your 1 hour of exercise per day.
That's very magnanimous of them.
And
I got to
the-
add one more thing from the checkpoints, and somebody in the chat has reminded me of it, is that there millions of bees died today because of the checkpoints. They were held up at Auckland checkpoints, and millions of bees died. I know a farmer who was going to be shipping calves up north tomorrow. They've actually cancelled that shipment because they're worried that the waits at the checkpoints may be incredibly stressful for livestock. And so they're actually cancelling the shifting of livestock simply because of the risk to livestock, and as we've seen in the case of the bees, with a deadly result where these checkpoints cause massive disruptions and huge costs.
Well, we've had a few incidents of lunacy with the various hard border closures where it's mainly bureaucrats who are going to the letter of the law. They told a farmer he couldn't drive his sheep through the Victoria New South Wales border, but he could put them on a plane at Melbourne Airport and fly them to Sydney. And I also learnt that actually the sheep would have to undergo 14 days quarantine. That's what a bureaucrat said. But on a more heartbreaking matter, a newborn baby was born in Tweed Heads in New South Wales, but needed treatment in a Gold Coast hospital. Their newborn parents were told they weren't allowed to see their newborn baby. They'd have to do 14 days quarantine.
Wow. That's actually a case that I that I heard from somebody today in New Zealand was due, and we had this at the first lockdown as well. Women who give birth in hospital, or if they have C-sections, their fathers and husbands, fathers of the children, husbands of the women, they're not allowed to come and stay at the hospitals. Basically, visitation is closed, and so they're not able to visit their newborn children, and fathers are basically locked out of the hospital. The one I was talking to today thankfully had a good result where lots of back and forth. They sort of gave him a special exemption.
Oh, how nice of him how nice of them to let him see his own child.
His own child for just an hour or two. I know, very, very nice. It's just for your safety, Tim. That's the important thing.
Because we have this singular focus on containing COVID and preventing deaths. There's still not enough attention to the deaths that are caused because of the lockdowns, which there should be an official lockdown death tally. We finally had an MP, a New South Wales MP, talk about. I'll just bring it up here. The MP for Alistair Henskins, the Kurangu MP, he revealed that there's been multiple teenage suicides in his electorate because of the mental health consequences of the COVID-19 lockdown. His own New South Wales government didn't help this week because they decided, even though they have basically suppressed the virus now in New South Wales, they had one new case today, they were going to cancel school sports. But that was later reversed. So they've had all of these, and I told you about the new wedding rules: no singing, no dancing, no mingling. There has been.
I don't remember that.
Yeah,
but
they've still introduced these overzealous restrictions, even though, and unlike Victoria, they have got on top of contact tracing, containing outbreaks. We are getting better when I say we, the Victorian government is getting better at...
The incompetent, the endlessly incompetent people, they might figure it out the third or fourth time around.
Yes, because active cases now in aged care, healthcare and disability care are starting to stabilise now.
And hey, suddenly if the flu doesn't get into the retirement villages, then the old people don't die. What a radical suggestion.
Yes, and if you actually do the contact tracing that you promised and actually check up on people who have been ordered to self-isolate, you'll contain the virus as well. So it's basically government doing the job that they said they would, that is containing the virus, not the draconian restrictions that they arbitrarily impose.
On the topic of the youth suicides you mentioned, going up in Australia, we actually had a preliminary report released in New Zealand just yesterday or today. I'll check the date on this, the 21st. So that was just today. The report was released early this morning, and it was actually reported by the chief coroner that suicide rate in New Zealand is actually slightly lower this year. So far this year have been 31 less suicides compared to this time last year. This is something we've talked a little bit about on the show, is, are we seeing suicides increase due to lockdowns? And they're actually saying that at least among young people, the youth suicides in New Zealand are actually down slightly. So from 15 to 19, we're down from 73 to 59. And down from 91 to 60 in the 20 to 24 age category. So among younger people, down this year in New Zealand during lockdowns. But what's changed is the suicides among 25s to 49s. Those have gone up by 28 during the lockdowns. And keep in mind, New Zealand's only had 22 deaths from COVID-19, or as we talked earlier, about 16 or 17, more likely. So the number of suicides increased in this age category are the men between 25 and 49 who are running businesses, who have families, who are the ones being hit by the lockdown. And losing absolutely everything in their lives, and then losing their lives as well. That seems to be with the tragedy in New Zealand, where we've seen those go up already, and I still fear that we will see those go higher, especially because we still do have the government payout for losing your job due to their lockdowns, but that money will stop at some point, and that's going to happen in the next few months.
We had Victoria's moratorium on evictions and rent increase, aka rent control, extended until December 31st. Andrew is occasionally in his daily press conference has another minister with him, so he had the Treasurer Tim Pallas. It was yesterday to give an economic update. He confessed that they're not extending business support to sole traders because we don't get much revenue from them, the state.
Oh, well, that's nice. It's all about the number. It's all about the money in the end, really.
We might catch up on some of the super chats. They're coming thick and fast tonight, which is great. I ate Upsy, who's super chatted before, has sent through New Zealand $16.99. Thank you, but hasn't included a message. I know that'll come through as a bit less Australian dollars. We'll know.
Don't need to rub it in.
We should actually do an analysis of what the currency exchange rate is, because it'll show which of our nation's reserve bank is printing more money.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are going to be in question time as well. We'll get through a couple of questions and a couple of other items that we had up. So let's get going. The next, I'll do the next super chat here. I think from Red Foreman Bear again for $5 Australian. Honest question: are Aussies obliged to accept the vax even against firmly held religious beliefs? And I believe that was a topic that we had written down as well. Obviously, the news this week, everyone in Australia and New Zealand would have heard it. The Scott Morrison's comments that the vaccine would be as mandatory as possible. And I do believe he's since walked that back, but you can take that question.
He said later because he said on radio that morning, mandatory as possible. Then he appeared on radio later that day and said, "Oh, we wouldn't make it mandatory, but
it's not like mandatory.
Yes, basically making the trend has been to exclude you from government benefits and services. This is through the no jab, no play policy. If you don't get your children
it's fine to
immunized,
refuse it it's fine to refuse it, but you can't buy and sell if you.
But don't forget that it's going to be free for every Australian, because it was announced on late Tuesday night that this Oxford vaccine trial he'd secured a manufacturing deal if this Oxford coronavirus vaccine goes through stage 3 clinical trials. So it's not actually approved and shown to work properly, but the deal has already been put in place that if it does approved, it'll be free and as mandatory as possible for every Australian, so you can get your freedom back.
Sounds like a who could refuse that deal?
Yeah, and I know that James Fox Higgins on Twitter said, how could Scott Morrison claim to be a Christian and yet force, as he calls it, the mark of the beast? Though Scott Morrison, he's bragged about the fact that he was the social services minister who introduced the no jab, no play policy. So he says this is achieving high immunization vaccination rates is a public policy issue he's most passionate about.
Good.
Though we might jump to another development in the coronavirus treatment front. Hydroxychloroquine, that demonized anti-malaria drug, which can treat COVID, but because it was suggested by President Trump, it's been demonized. I mean, I'm at risk here mentioning it on this stream, but even though it is listed as a poison by our government of Victoria, St Vincent's Hospital in Melbourne is trialling hydroxychloroquine on staff who've been infected by the coronavirus to see how well it works. This is despite the official advice from the Australian government's Therapeutic Goods Administration, the TGA, which is the equivalent of the US's FDA, strongly discouraging its use as a treatment. But that is
imagine,
it's good progress though that this hospital in Melbourne, St Vincent's, is willing to put the politicization of the drug aside and do a trial.
And if it does work out, or how many lives could have been saved if it had not been politicized, and if it hadn't been Orange Man bad.
Now we've also, this super chat will segue into our next topic. This is from Castle Match for $10 Thank you. Will you, the Unshackled, be covering the Melbourne anti-lockdown protests in September? Yes, we will try and aim to, because basically since the coronavirus curve is on the way down now during the second wave, as the title of our show is Corona Fatigue, a lot of Melburnians are now asking, come on, when can coronavirus restrictions begin to be relaxed? Everyone's finding the masks to become quite burdensome now, because you constantly overheat. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, during the demonization of the virus deniers and the anti-maskers, the main anti-lockdown pro-freedom group in Victoria, 99% Unite, which is run by Fanos Panias and Rafael Fernandez. Rafael will be returning on my Monday edition of Wilms Front. They decided having a rally at that time would have been counterproductive, but now the tide is turning back towards when can we be free. Fanos has been promoting a Freedom Day, Australia-wide on the 5th of September, aiming for 500,000 to come out nationwide. No venues have been locked in at this stage, but he's determined to do it now, Thanos. So we shall see what the public opinion, media, and government opinion is during that time, because as I said, once the media pack, Melbourne press pack, turned on Dan Andrews when there was so much confusion and contradiction over stage 4 lockdowns, and now that we've had the curve turned now, definitely the public opinion curve has turned a corner.
Yeah, and then suddenly the media turns a corner too, and we have some protests, it's called the NZ Liberty March, actually organised for tomorrow, and across the country. I suspect they will go on to protest the lockdowns and to say that there should be no more lockdowns. Lockdowns need to end, and the government needs to find a different way, rather than restricting people's liberty, find a different way to deal with pandemics. And we'll see how well it goes. I should have actually sent you footage, and I've only just thought of it now. There was a small gathering last week of about 30 or 40 people at Aotea Square in Auckland. I did mention it briefly on the show. They were dispersed by police. They sent in police vans and at least a dozen, 2 police officers to forcibly disperse that gathering. I suspect something similar will happen tomorrow. I don't know. I actually won't be covering them again. I've just got too much stuff on, and I'm gonna just spend time with my family rather than to me while I think it's a good thing for people to be doing, I'm currently not in a position to really be pushing on that much. But I definitely, if you're watching the show and you haven't heard about it, go check out the NZ Liberty March, and the least I can do is let you know.
Because we saw earlier this month the German people, a huge rally in Berlin against the anti-lockdown laws of the Angela Merkel government, because that nation has suffered through both Nazism and communism, so they know what it's like to experience oppression. It's grained into a lot of Germans' memories. And I mentioned Florida before. Their curve was going down. That's without any shutdowns at all. Governor Ron DeSantis, he's held firm. And a great development this week was Laura Loomer, the most sensitive woman on the internet, winning the Republican primary for Florida's 21st district, which covers West Palm Beach and Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. He tweeted a shout out to her, but I'm not sure if you saw her victory party, which was emceed by Milo.
I saw a little bit of it.
No social distancing, no masks. They were all embracing on the stage. Lots of confetti as well, streamers and everything. So in Florida, their life has gone on, they've turned the corner anyway.
And we've seen that again. We've talked many times the ups and downs of the sort of Sweden approach, and what the same approach is in many states in America. And it appears the curve in most of these countries, where at least it starts to get out of control. It doesn't matter what they do, the same thing happens. The curve looks the same in all of these countries, all of the different things that they've tried. The exceptions, of course, being the countries with massive moats or easy to secure borders, like some of the Scandinavian countries, Australia, New Zealand, and so on, have basically almost gone for a complete suppression. The countries that haven't managed that, they all look the same no matter what they did.
And we're seeing the UK, they're basically following the Australian leaders re-shut it down approach.
Shut it down again.
If it's not cities, then it's borders, because the UK's got their quarantine
and it's
now.
It's an economic death spiral, and I see some people in the chat, actually, a friend of ours here, Log Spiral, brought that up in my chat, saying New Zealand's unemployment rate went down during lockdown. Unbelievably good. And that's because people who are on the the wage subsidy in New Zealand don't count as unemployed. So the employment rate is able to go up because nobody is losing employment in New Zealand. And obviously, that is a death spiral that is going to hit when the cash runs out. We know already that I've written these numbers down. 83,000 mortgages are on deferral at the moment. That's 7% of all mortgages. We've got 11,000 or 1% completely in arrears. And in total, about 17% of mortgages have got reduced payments, are interest only, completely being deferred or in arrears. So that's a huge percentage of New Zealanders who are basically not able to pay their mortgages at the moment. And the effects of that are coming. And we don't know when, but at the very least, it's still looking like it'll be months before any of that is fully realized.
Well, our unemployment figures ending in the June quarter actually had Victoria at 6.8% unemployment compared to places like WA and Queensland, which had nearly 9% unemployment. Obviously, the September quarter figures, we're all expecting Victoria's unemployment figures to be much worse, but it is interesting that those jurisdictions, WA, which has eliminated the virus because it has shut off, because Western Australia, it's relied on a lot of fly in, fly out mining workers, tourism as well. Same with Queensland as well. Those that rely on the more seasonal travel interstate people to prop up their economy, they may have made themselves coronavirus free, but it's come at a massive cost.
We have one more super chat here, and we might have time for one more. So here's your last chance to bring through a super chat, and we probably don't have time for any more questions. From Andrew McInnes again, $5 Corona fatigue. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to read it out the way that he's written it. This is a good topic to discuss about, don't you think? I hope I got that.
Maybe he's trying to impersonate your New Zealand accent.
Mine is, well, I thought that may have been the case.
I know that Australians often comment about how New Zealanders say six or six, but you also say, instead of fifth, you say fifth.
Fifth.
Yeah, that's a sort of a...
Fifth and sixth.
Yeah,
yes.
But that doesn't get much attention, the fifth one, I think, because the way you say six sounds like something else.
Yes, that's right. And, if we don't have, we do have other questions, but we can't get around to those. Please bring them back next week. We did get through all the super chats, though, so that's good. And, we'll let you start to go into the final bits and pieces, Tim.
Yeah, well, we might finish off by we're getting a better idea of what the COVID normal might be, and Dan Andrews explicitly used this word today, that a part of the new normal will be more surveillance, so that outbreaks can be contained better. And Scott Morrison said at his press conference today to keep Australia open, the three most important things are testing, tracing, and containing outbreaks. And with the combine New Zealand's mandatory quarantine for members of the community and WA's ankle bracelets, it definitely, and because as we've just discussed, that the public has turned a corner and they now want to be free, but they also want authorities to contain the virus. So
they want to be safe more than they still want to be more safe.
Yeah, but they want to be safe and free, and the only way for that to
surveillance.
Surveillance, which is Daniel Andrews has talked about, maybe the COVID Safe app will work better after the second wave. I know in New Zealand you've got your QR code check-in.
They don't work.
Yeah, we've had a few Woolworths supermarkets trialing their own QR code check-in system, which is voluntary for contact tracing purposes. Obviously the pubs, restaurants, and cafes, when they reopen for dine-in, you'll have to sign in there, and obviously as I said, the contact tracing is getting better, which is a form of basically keeping track of people. And it sounds like that, and especially with the vaccine as well, the price of freedom. It's not really, and this is you and me having quite strong libertarian streaks. They're trading your privacy to the government for freedom. That's a trade-off that doesn't.
It's a recipe for tyranny and
Yes.
and slavery, and not one with a happy ending, as we may see.
Yeah.
Good. Well, not good.
We've just got one more super chat from Clarky, who's a regular fan and super chatter of the show. 20 New Zealand dollars. Thank you so much. He says, "Cheers, guys." Yes.
Or she,
Cheers.
Well, you misgendered. I think you misgendered her again.
Oh, it's her. Yeah, that's because. Sorry, ma'am.
All right, good. Well, with that, we'll just about end the show. And I thought I have to mention, possibly next week, we may talk about the sentencing of the Christchurch terrorist, the mosque shooter. The sentencing is due to take place soon. It's expected to take a few days.
Because he pled guilty, he changed his plea.
Yeah. But we obviously the exact length of the sentencing is not locked in stone, so we may have that next week or the week after. We'll see how that goes. It's unknown at this point if Auckland will still be locked down. We don't find out until Monday. So it's again, it's sort of, we take things day by day, and do stay tuned for when or how the next episode of this show will be out. And until then, whether you're out protesting or just gardening, stay safe, stay free.
Yep, and as I mentioned, Monday Wilms Front, it'll be back next week, as I mentioned, with Rafael Fernandez. There'll also be a special Wilms Front tomorrow night to cover the New Zealand election night count. I have an excellent panel lined up, as well as myself. Joining me will be former Unshackled contributor Jacob Watts, popular conservative Twitter personality Alexandra Marshall, and law professor David Flint as well, who I'm keen to hear his expert legal opinion on the validity of the border closures, because that is, as I mentioned, a big election issue in the territory.
Very good. Well, we will all see you next week, we hope. And thank you for watching, and have a good weekend. And we will see you all next time.
Yeah, we're hopefully, again, we'll have better-ish bad news.
That's right.
All right, have a good weekend.
Good night.